Welcome to Feminine Roadmap Podcast. I'm your host, Gina Farrar. Each week, I bring you an inspiring conversation to help you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife so that you can not only survive, but thrive in your second half. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It is Gina here, and today we are going to be talking about self-care, mental, physical, emotional self-care. And we want to remove the idea that self-care is selfish. We are going to talk about how important it is and that it is actually an act of generosity. So today, to have this wonderful conversation with me, I have my friend Kim Acedo. She is a midlife women's wellness coach. Kim, thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you for having me, Gina.
It's my pleasure. So before we hit record, you were expressing that you love to talk about self-care and you love to help women in midlife really tap back into taking care of who they are, how they show up in the world, in their mind, their body, and their spirit, right?
Yes.
So why don't you share a little bit about what it is that you do and how you go about serving women in midlife?
Sure. Well, let's see. So I'm a midlife women's wellness coach, but I wasn't always a wellness coach. I was actually a personal trainer for about almost 15 years. And most of my clients were women in midlife. And I kind of just attracted that demographic for some reason. And this is when I was in my 20s, you know. But for some reason, I attracted this demographic and I grew a real care and compassion for them. And so I was helping them with their fitness, right? Helping them with whatever they came to me for, whether they wanted to lose weight or, you know, get stronger or get more flexible or whatever. And that was great. So I enjoyed spending time with them in the gym and learning about them and helping them with their physical fitness. But I realized that there are so many, once they left the gym, all those other hours of the week, you know, there's 168 hours in a week. And I was only working with my clients, you know, 1 to 1.5 hours a week, you know, 2 or 3 times a week, right? For a half an hour session. Yes. And they were great. They would work really hard. They would, you know, do everything I said to do, squats, push-ups, you know, all that stuff. But it was all the other hours of the week that they weren't taking care of themselves, right? They weren't doing any other exercise. They were not making healthy food choices. They were not sleeping well. They had stress and overwhelm. They were going through all kinds of other issues. And so I realized I wanted to help them with those other hours, not the hours they were with me, because anybody can be quote unquote obedient when you're with your trainer, right? But it's all the other times where nobody's watching, right? That they were having a hard time making healthy choices, right? And a lot of it had to do with just, you know, self-worth and believing that it's important to take the time to take care of themselves beyond just, you know, exercising a couple times a week or seeing me. So that's how I became a wellness coach. And I stuck with this demographic because I just really care about them. You know, they spent most of their lives taking care of everybody else. And now, you know, a lot of things are happening during this time of life. And, you know, this is really an opportunity to take care of themselves, right? And to plan for the next half. Yes. So, you know, this has been my thing for the past 5 years now. What are the recurring
are you seeing a pattern in the way that women behave or the ways that they neglect themselves? What kind of patterns did you identify in those training years that kind of really made you focus on how to help?
Yeah. Well, you know, I focus on midlife women, but it's all of us women, right? I mean, I grew up in a time where, I mean, just like my clients and just, it's getting better, but similarly, I watched the women in my family kind of do all the work while the men kind of sit around and the men get served and the women are responsible for all aspects of taking care of things, right? So not only do we have to take care of ourselves, but we're responsible for taking care of everybody else. as well, but what happens is that we end up taking care of everybody else's needs first. And if there's any more time or energy or money left, which there never is, then we tend to take care of ourselves. And what happens is that over the years, we just keep pushing our self-care further and further, back. And, when you hit midlife, it really catches up with you because your body really starts to change. You might go through menopause during that time, in your early 50s is usually when it happens. And a lot of other things are happening during that time too, that can cause a woman to kind of stop and evaluate her life, whether it's becoming an empty nester, her kids going off to college or getting married and all that, or, being at the same career for 30 years and evaluating that, or, losing a parent or even a parent just getting ill or needing, long-term care and just kind of evaluating that part of her life, or being married to the same person for 30 years, another thing, where you just kind of like, okay, now the kids are gone. Now I'm married to this person, kind of, kind of evaluating that as well. So, just a lot of things are happening during that time of life. And so it's really a time for reflection, and it's a wonderful time to make some changes.
It's so fascinating to me how it really is like a halfway mark in a lot of our minds. It's like there's something about this time that almost wakes us up, right? To things that maybe we have put off, things that we've dreamt about, or maybe for some people, they're so disconnected from what brings them joy. Because for me, I can be completely honest, I get a lot of joy from doing things for my family. I don't feel like I'm a martyr and nobody appreciates me, but I actually really enjoy that. And so I think what I'm processing is, how do we find that joy in enjoying ourselves and what we enjoy outside of the servant, the serving, the loving, the providing role? How do we shift that a little bit and learn to find joy and be okay with loving ourselves?
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. I'll say that, right? Because again, some things are so deeply ingrained in us because of the way we've always watched our mom or our grandma or our aunt kind of serve everybody else. And I can't tell you how many funerals I've been to for a woman who has passed. And when people go up there and talk about her life, they talk about what a servant she was. And that's beautiful, right? Because serving is a wonderful gift that you give somebody. But, my whole thing is, self-care is something that you want to do for yourself, and it's not selfish, In fact, like I said, or you said earlier, that it's generous, right? And I'm not saying, like, my message is not put your needs above everyone else's needs, right? I come first. Everybody else comes second, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying put your needs right up there with everyone else's needs, right? So,
like equal value.
Yeah.
Put yourself on that same level.
Exactly, right. Why should you put your needs behind everyone else's? Why can't your needs be just as important as anyone else's needs? And I think if we start to think of it like that, because I think, again, the whole self-care selfish thing is thinking, I got to be first. My needs come first. And then if there's any time, energy, or whatever, then I can give to other people. But that's not the case at all, right? So when we make time for ourselves, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a lot of time, but I think quality is more important than quantity when it comes to self-care. Doesn't mean you have to take this solo weekend vacation, or you have to get, a $150 massage every week. Or, you have to have a spa day with your girlfriends, $200 spa day with your girlfriends, or anything like that. But the quality of time that you take, whether it's a bath, whether it's, I don't know, saying no to something so that you can do something for yourself, it doesn't always have to be big. In fact, small acts of self-care are actually better, You know, it's the quality of time that you spend taking care of you that I think is most important.
When you're talking about these small acts of self-care, I was thinking about this gentleman and a work that he does called Tiny Habits. His name is BJ Fogg. Have you heard of him?
I think I've seen his name, but I like that title. Yeah.
The idea that you're talking about small acts of self-care brings me back to the principle that he uses is when you want to shift a habit, and this really is a habit to put ourselves off, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten into the habit of putting ourselves at the end. So if there's something you do every day, like brush your teeth, he encourages you to add an action, 5 minutes or less, every day to that. You're anchoring it to another habit. So I brush my teeth, I take a walk, a 5-minute walk. I brush my teeth, I read 5 minutes of a book. And so I was thinking Tiny Habits, if you Google him on YouTube, he's got some great things out there. But I did a 7-day challenge and it was interesting. I did it with fitness. Every time I went to the bathroom, I drink a lot of water. So this was the idea. I did squats, 5 squats every time.
Right.
I did it at work too, because it only takes like 15, 20 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So this is a great thought. Let's talk about this, how we could create tiny habits of self-care. So if it's small acts of self-care, of kindness, of self-compassion, let's just ideate a little bit about what those little things could look like just to get into the habit. So it doesn't feel like now I have to add this thing in, but how can I just kind of just put a little something there that makes me feel like my cup is a little more full?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another one of my philosophies is not to try to fix what's wrong. So I think a lot of times, and I'll get to that. That's what I'm going to get there. A lot of times we look at our lives and we try to think, okay, what can I improve? What's not going right? What are my weaknesses that I can improve? And that's really a recipe for failure. It's kind of like when I was in school, I was not good at the hard sciences, or the chemistry I was terrible at, and I was better at, like biomechanics or psychology classes and those types of things. And I really, me trying to, spend a lot of time trying to fix something that's maybe never going to be of strength is really not the best use of my time, right? So my philosophy is you want to build on your strengths as opposed to trying to fix your weaknesses. So when it comes to self-care, there are probably things that you're already doing, like brushing your teeth, which is an act of self-care, let's not forget. Right? But something that we have developed as a habit over time. It probably wasn't a habit in the beginning when our mom or dad had to tell us, hey, did you brush your teeth? And we had to say, oh, wait, no, I haven't. And so we go do it until we're, adults and now we do it automatically. Well, everybody is probably doing some acts of self-care as small as brushing your teeth that you can build on. And so that's what I love about that idea that you just talked about is, I use stretching. I promote stretching. I tell people it's a great time to stretch because, women tend to hear that women just don't stretch enough, right? They don't stretch and they start getting stiff and then they get pain and then it causes you to not even want to be physical at all. Mm-hmm. Stretching is really important. I think stretching is a great thing to do while you're brushing your teeth. You can throw one leg on top of the bed there and, and reach for your toes or whatever. So that's kind of where I think everybody should begin is what are you already doing, even if it's very small, and how can you build on that? How can you just either do it a little bit more, do it more often, or, do it with more quality? Right? Maybe with more intention or more presence.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Stretching while you brush your teeth. That is exactly what I'm talking about, where it's like you're adding a habit to a habit. So
exactly.
The thing that's automatic, you add something to it, and then before you know it, they're inseparable. You've created something that's locked into your, subconscious as we do this and we do this.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, so there are probably many things that you can think of throughout your day that are acts of self-care. I know we have to sleep, but we all go to sleep every night. And that's an act of self-care. We can just try to stay up for days and days and days, but at some point we have to go to sleep. So again, even if you just sleep a couple hours a night, you want to try to build on that, right? How can you build on the quality of your sleep? And these are really 4 areas that I work with my clients on: is their sleep, their food, their mood, and their exercise. So we usually look at the area that's going the best. Now, maybe it's not wonderful or fantastic, but it's okay, or the best of the worst. And we try to build on that, as opposed to saying, oh, my sleep is the worst area of those 4. Let's try to improve that. Because what happens is when you build on your strengths, it helps the other areas. It picks up the other areas.
It's like getting little wins, right? It motivates everything.
Right. And one good choice leads to the next good choice, mentally and physiologically. Mentally, because you may have heard the whole, make your bed idea, right? That I don't know if it was a guy in the Marines or a Navy SEAL or something, right? Make your bed. It's the first accomplishment you have in the day. And then, you can always come home to a made bed or something, right?
Yes.
So, you want to think about how you can build on something small, because mentally you're going to say, oh, I just did something good for myself. That feels really good, and then maybe that'll lead to another choice of doing something good for yourself, right? So it's mental, but it's also physiological. So let's say you get a little bit better sleep. When you get better sleep, then physiologically you feel better. Yeah. And you might tend to make a healthier food choice. You may tend to want to go for a walk as opposed to just laying on the couch watching TV, right? Maybe
it'll definitely elevate your mood to sleep better.
Absolutely. Yes. So by building on your strengths, you improve the areas that were weaknesses. It kind of automatically happens, which is so beautiful.
You know what I've started to do? I was having some tightness in one of my hips, so I started investigating yoga. And I also had a little difficulty shutting my mind off. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, well, I will do yoga for sleep. So I got on YouTube and found Yoga with Adrienne. I'm plugging her.
Oh, yeah.
Does not know
I know
exist,
who she is.
Her yoga is amazing.
It is. Mm-hmm.
And it's there's nothing, pardon my language, woo-woo about it. It's just like, move your body. Mm-hmm. Do whatever feels good is her tag, right? So my point is that I started doing these yogas for sleep. Mm-hmm. There was like an 18-minute one and I think a 27-minute one. And I was trying to make myself learn to wind down. That was the habit I was trying to get to. So I would actually fall asleep doing the yoga.
Oh, really? Hopefully you were in child's pose or something like that.
The dead man's pose?
Oh, just on your back?
On your back? Oh, yeah. That's so great. And I would be like, oh, I'm asleep.
Right. That's the point though, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. But there were certain leg stretches, lower body stretches where you hug your knees and you do these different things. I took that practice to my bed. Mm. And so even if my husband's asleep, he sleeps like a rock. I'll do these stretches before I go to bed. It takes me 5 minutes. It's another little tiny habit. It sounds like a lot, but it's not, because I do the same thing every time. Mm-hmm. And when I do those things, my body goes, oh, time to go to sleep. Yes. So it was a tiny habit that I was trying to find a solution. Then I just took a piece of that yoga to bed with me. Mm-hmm. I even do it when I travel. It's even better when I travel, especially if you sit a lot. So you could think of things like that where lights are out, you're laying in bed, you do some stretches, breathing. I'm thinking of habits that I've practiced, deep belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, those kinds of things, because what ends up happening is your body starts to crave those good things. Have you found that to be true in your practice? I'm just saying personally, my body's like, oh, you really need to just spend 5 minutes. It's so simple. And then I'm like, and I can go to sleep.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Our body is just craving self-care. It is asking for it all the time. You can feel it. I'll find myself, answering emails or doing something on the computer, and and all of a sudden I'm holding my breath.
Yes. Not breathing at all.
Not breathing. Right. And I'm like, what? Or the breathing is very shallow. And so this is a chance to practice self-care where you just I need to breathe, right? So I'll take some deep breaths and I'll try to remind myself to breathe, even though I'm going to breathe automatically. Your body just does that. But yeah,
the right kind of breathing.
The right kind of breathing, right? Yeah. Right. The kind of breathing that is going to also help me with what I'm doing, because I'm going to get more oxygen to my brain. I'm going to think better. I'm going to, so, but I love your yoga in bed, because that's something that we do too. We talk about brushing your teeth. That's something we do every day, hopefully twice a day. Right. Yeah. And then going to bed and waking up. So bed, I think, is another great anchor, because it's something it's a place that we go every day. So in the morning is when we have the most self-discipline and willpower. So the morning is a great time to cultivate some kind of a healthy habit, whether it's to eat a healthy breakfast or to get a little bit of physical activity in, or some stretching to wake up the body and the blood flow. Even a little, a 5 or 10 minute meditation time, or praying time, or reading time, or journaling time. All of these things, especially, yes, for women, but especially for women in midlife, because this is a time of self-discovery and self-reflection and exploration. Women never used to live beyond 50, Gina,
Wow.
And never used to get to the menopause age. And so now we're living, because of health advancements and the technology and all these things, we're hoping to live, another 50 years, right? Once you hit 50. So this is why I call it the second half of life, because there's an opportunity now to say, okay, I paid a lot of dues, in the first half of my life, whether it's, building your career and raising a family and, doing all those types of things. And now is your chance to take, the wisdom, the experience, the maturity that you've gained in that first half, and say, okay, what can I do now to take better care of me? Because it's no longer a luxury. When the older we get, self-care is no longer a luxury. It becomes a necessity. In our 20s, our bodies are so resilient. We can have a drink or two or more, and, we could stay up late, and we can eat junk and all this kind of stuff and get a few hours of sleep and still be fine the next day. Now our body, as we get older, our body is just less and less resilient. And so we must take care of ourselves. It's not a want anymore. It becomes a need. So that's why, as you could tell, I'm so passionate about this message, because I just really care about women,
One of the things that crossed my mind, you're talking about, second half of life and discovery. I joke that this is like graduating from high school, but you're doing it at 50. Because people say, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Your kids have grown up, you're retiring or whatever. And it's like the same questions, but like years later.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, like you said, all of this knowledge, all of this wisdom, one of the things that I think can help people figure out what good self-care could be for them is what brings them joy.
Yes.
Yes. Maybe they used to sing. Why did you stop singing? Just
right.
YouTube is legitimately like a place you could go and re-tap into painting, singing. If you're a techie, you could learn something new, like literally anything you would want to like relearn or get some, just kind of test your interests in.
Mm-hmm.
You could sing around the house every day.
Right.
There's things like that can be self-care too. Really tapping back into if music brings you joy or if reading brings you joy, maybe writing. Because I've met a lot of people recently that when they were younger, they wanted to write, but people were like, oh, you can't make money doing that. So they stopped. Right. So what story can you identify? Maybe there's something you loved and you stopped because the consensus of the people you respected said, oh, that's not what you should do with your life. Maybe that's the thing you tap back into, which is self-care. It's reconnecting
right
to your joy.
Yeah. I always remember this story my mom told me, and she's told me it a couple times, but I always remember it. So she had to get some new plates for, dinner plates for the house. And this was when I was little. And she and her friend went to the store and they were looking at the different plates. And my mom's friend said, so which ones do you like? And she said, I don't know. I don't know what I like. And I always remember that because I think we as women, we tend to choose the things that we should like, or we do the things that we think we should do.
We mirror what we think is right.
Yes, right. So we live in the should.
Yes.
Right. And one of my clients said one time, I'm tired of shoulding all over myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. And so, another thing to think about as you enter your midlife years is to discover what you want, what you like. Yes. That's just like what you're saying. And we have to give ourselves permission to say it's okay to want things, to like things, to not live in the should or the need to or the have to, but more living in the want to, the get to, and that's all about having joy, right? Like you said. And I went to a talk the other day, and it was interesting. We were talking about fun, and she said something like, why have we put so much shame around having fun or being happy? My whole thing is health and happiness for women. And so the two kind of go hand in hand. When we're happy, we tend to spend a little more time taking care of our health. And when we're healthy, we tend to be happier because we're living in a healthier body, and we're able to do more things. It's not painful to get up and down, get in and out of a car, or it's not so strenuous to walk up the stairs. So with a healthy body, you can have a lot more fun. You can do a lot more things, and you have a lot more energy, and you are happier. And therefore, all your experiences are better. And all of these things bring you joy. So, I think the root, Gina, is self-worth. That's the root of it, because you have to get to the point where you believe that you are worth it. And sometimes it starts with those little things first. Before you book $1,000 vacation for yourself, that may be too big, right? That may be too big. That might be something that you want to do maybe in the future, but maybe that's just a little too much right now.
Yeah.
So we got to start with those tiny habits, like you said, those small things. And another thing that I think trips people up is they think the small things don't matter. What is a little stretching going to do? No, I need to go to the gym. I need to get on a mat, and I need to stretch for an hour a day. That's the only way. No, that's not true. We have to remember that self-care is cumulative. It's what you do over time. It's not what you do once in a while. So every little thing that you do for yourself adds up over time. And we have to remember that when it comes to anything that we do to take care of ourselves. Any small thing is going to add up.
So, Kim, that was a quotable. So if anybody is not driving, write down that self-care is cumulative. It's what you do over time. It's profound to really think about how we got to where we are if we feel unhealthy. Whether it's an emotional unhealthiness, unhealthy thinking, unhealthy eating, unhealthy drinking, it was a cumulative experience.
Exactly.
Go from one day healthy to the next day unhealthy. Typically, the unhealthiness or the disease comes from, it's a result of a cumulative experience, right?
That's right.
And I think with self-care, if we've been out of the habit of it, it's going to take that accumulative effect, that accumulating it to maybe begin to feel again the joy. I don't know that the joy for some people, like you said, your mom didn't even know what she liked. Well, if you are in that place of not knowing who you are and what you like, then you're just going to have to put faith in the process of doing something for yourself every day. And one day, I promise, and I know Kim will back me up on this, you will be like, oh, you missed it when you didn't do it. Mm-hmm. You feel good when you did do it. Like if you're disconnected from your own joy, it's that cumulative effect, Kim, that you talked about. Mm-hmm. That's a cumulative experience. It took us this long to get here. We have to give way, lean into that process of getting back to or even getting there for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And yeah. And you know what is a great accountability for me? Well, first of all, I have to practice what I preach, right? I don't always feel like eating the healthy meal or exercising or whatever. I'm just like everybody else. I don't always feel like it. It's not always the easiest decision, but of course, I am an example, right, to my clients. And so, that's really important for me. But also, we are all examples. Just like I have watched my mom and my grandma and my aunt and all the other women in my family take care of other people before themselves. Well, other girls are watching us. They are watching us, and they're going to develop the same beliefs based on what they're seeing. And so I think that's a really great source of accountability too, is that I want to be the change you wish to see in the world kind of concept. I want to be the healthy person who practices self-care, who explores and discovers and has fun and does all of these things, because I want girls to watch that and learn that that's okay. Girls are watching us. Other people are watching us with hawk-like precision. And we have to ask ourselves, what kind of example do we want to be? And I want to live in a world where women practice self-care. They take care of themselves. Now, we're talking about physical self-care, Gina, but there's also the kind of self-care where you stand up for yourself.
Yes.
Right? And you say no to things that are going to be too much for you or the wrong thing for you or whatever. So self-care is just this huge, blanket of things that we can be thinking about.
Oh, Kim, because I have 2 daughters, and one of the conversations we have often is, you have a voice and you have permission to use that voice if you're ever uncomfortable, unhappy, unsure, or you see an opportunity and you would like to have that opportunity, then you speak up. So I 150% agree. And I think there are some mindset challenges. There's the actions, which are I should all over myself. But when it comes to that emotional piece, that standing up for yourself, we go back to that self-worth that you talked about, but we also go back to, what does a good girl do? How does a good girl behave? And the identities that are attached with women who are outspoken. I happen to be outspoken, so I understand what women are talking about. So different people, it doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it, right? That's not what you're saying. You're just talking about being authentic with your emotions and putting it out there in a situation, right?
Yeah, it just comes back to that same principle of putting your needs right up there with everyone else's. Why should you have to tend to everybody else while neglecting your own self?
Or never get to eat what you like because so-and-so doesn't like that.
Yes, that is a great example. I have that all the time. I have a client who will come to me and wants to eat healthier, but her husband, he could care less about his health or his weight or anything like that, but she wants to eat healthier. So now she feels responsible to making 2 dinners. 1 dinner was enough in the past, and now she's got to make 2 dinners. She's got to make something healthy for herself and then something that her husband likes as well, right?
But does she though?
Yeah, exactly. Right. This is our whole
asking for a friend here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Again, so it comes back to putting your needs up there too. And see, this is where we need to know what our needs are as well.
Yeah.
We need to know what we like. We need to know what we want, and we need to know what we need also, so that we can, here's another thing that we women have a hard time with, is ask for it. We need to ask for help. We need to ask for what we want. I go to a lot of women's events that help promote women's leadership, right? Because I think there's only, in the US, I think 2 out of 10, there's only 2 out of 10 leaders or CEOs or executives in companies and organizations. Only 2 out of 10 are women. And in Canada, it's a little better, but not a whole lot. I think every 3 out of 10 executives are women. And women have to be asked, I heard recently, 7 times to apply for a certain position,
Like
to go for something.
Someone has to suggest.
Someone has to ask them 7 times before they consider it. Whereas a male only needs to be asked once before he considers it, right? Women, when applying for jobs, feel like they need to be 80%, at least 80% qualified for that job before they apply. Whereas men, a lot of times they don't have that fear, right? That they're not qualified, and they'll apply and they end up getting the jobs, right? They end up getting the promotions. They end up moving up. So we need to know what we want. We need to believe that we're worth it. And, again, it's not that huge jump. It starts with the small acts of self-care, and eventually it leads to that.
I love the example, Kim, of the woman feeling like she has to serve 2 meals. And in my mind, I'm picturing women being kind of like irritated and irate about that. One of the things I like to talk about is personally, when we talk mindset, which is part of your self-care, no one else has to be bad in order for what we want to be good. It's important that we separate, not like, oh, well, blaming or the martyr syndrome or the victim syndrome, or in order for me to be valid, there has to be a conflict, right? So that justifies what I want because there's this conflict. So let's say the conflict is, I want healthy, my husband doesn't, and now I have to cook 2 meals.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's the bad guy and holding me back. That could be the story. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I would like the shift to be, you know what? I want to eat healthy and he doesn't. That's fine. We're going to find a solution that supports both of us instead of me having to be the solution to everything.
Yes, that's right.
So that's right. Speaking up as well, in my mind. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also separating that unhealthy emotional thing that I can't ask for what I want unless there's something negative forcing me to.
Yes, right.
I would like to
That's
remove
really
that
true.
negative pressure and make it more, because I have this desire, it's worthy. Whether I'm being opposed or not opposed, it doesn't matter. It's about the fact that this is something that I want. If it's not unreasonable, like you said, like every time it's self-care, it has to be $1,000 spa day. I mean, if you can afford that, by all means. But for most of us, it could literally be driving up to the mountains with a journal and sitting quietly unplugged for 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah. That's even big. I had a client who she lived with her husband, but then her daughter came and moved in with her little boy, moved into their house. And so her daughter has to go to work every morning and their son has to go to school every morning. And so my client used to, have this happy, quiet, peaceful house every morning. And now she's got, this little boy running around who has to get breakfast made for him and then has to get his lunch ready for him and then, has to get him just out to school. And his mom's like, rushing around because she's trying to get him ready. She's trying to get herself ready. So my client decided to wake up in the morning and go downstairs, make herself a cup of tea, take it back upstairs to her bedroom, shut the door, and drink her tea and read or pray or do something for 10 minutes. And everybody knew that was her time. Just 10 minutes in the morning, she needed her time to have her solitude and her peace, even though other people came in to her space, right? So we have to create those boundaries in that space for us. And we have to ask for help because people, especially if people around us are so used to us doing everything and us picking up the slack and us being there, they know they can count on us, which is, that's a badge of honor. Yeah, I want to be a person that people can count on. I want to be responsible. We all, those are things to have pride in. Absolutely. But, we have to be able to ask for help. And the whole thing, again, where you're talking about making 2 dinners, this is an opportunity to ask your partner. Remember, your spouse is your partner. You guys are in this together. You're a team. You're not in competition.
Yeah.
To ask your partner for help. And that might be, we can go off and name 10 different things that they can do, whether it's making their own dinner or eating what you're eating or whatever. That's another thing we have a hard time with as women is asking for help, and then we end up having to take on everything.
It's really a mindset shift if you think about it, right, Kim? It's about how we perceive and believe situations to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes we are undoing what we would call cultural, meaning it could be cultural nationality, it could be cultural family, it could be cultural community, you know, because if you live in a certain community, depending on the level of the income or the level of the thinking, there's going to be certain expectations. And sometimes we find ourselves out of alignment with those things, or we're so in alignment with those things that we're out of alignment with ourselves. So I believe that self-care is a lot about getting back into alignment, getting our mind, body, and spirit all aligned so that we can actually, ironically, do a better job of serving the people that we love. So the very thing we're avoiding, that's why it's generosity. You said self-care is generosity, which I'm probably going to put that on an Instagram post and share that. So good. Because when my cup is filled and when I'm at peace, for the most part, with who I am, we're human. Nothing's ever 100%. But when we can get to that place of, yes, I do feel like reasonably getting my needs met, reasonably making good choices, all of these things, then the thing that I want to do, which is love and care for the people around me, becomes more possible. Wouldn't you agree?
That is exactly right. Yep. I say self-care is one of the most generous things that you can do for the people that you love.
Mm-hmm.
Because the better you take care of you, the better you can serve and help others. And that's another thing that we want to do as women. We don't just want to be there. We don't just want to give our time, but we want to do a great job. Yeah. Right? We really want to be present when we're serving. That's when we get the most joy out of it. And, serving is wonderful. Again, serving is not the problem. It's not the issue. It's not serving yourself and you're only serving other people, right? So yeah, it's the better you take care of yourself, then you can serve others better and with more joy and with a better attitude, because we don't want to get to the point where we become resentful.
Yeah.
Because it started off as something we enjoyed. And now, because we keep saying yes, yes, yes to that thing, and it's now gone out of control and we're not taking care of ourselves at all, now we become resentful. And we don't want to feel that toward our parent or toward anybody else that we serve. We want to do it with joy and with love. That's how we want to approach it.
When you said that, a thought immediately popped into my head, which is part of self-care is saying no.
Yeah.
Self-care could be as simple as looking at your calendar and saying, not that it's all about joy, but I think joy is a goal. Mm-hmm. You could look at your calendar and say, does this bring me joy? Does this bring me joy? Am I doing this out of obligation? Let's put it in context. Oh, my friend's having a Tupperware party. Oh, my friend's having a Color Street party. I have to go because she's my friend. My question is, do you though? You can love your friend, be a good friend, and not add 15 different things onto your plate. Do you know what I'm saying? Like saying no that's something I tell people I don't do those parties. Now, I used to give those parties, so I did my due diligence to pay it all back. Like, okay, I know I used to be that girl, but you come to the place where it's like some of our self-care is really looking at our calendar and recognizing these things are not necessary to who I am and who I want to be. So maybe this popped into my head. Self-care really, Kim, could potentially be knowing who you are and what your mission is. If you could get a vision for your life, maybe the yeses and nos get a little clearer. Mm-hmm. What do I say yes to? What do I say no to? Why am I saying yes? Why am I saying no? You people who've never given the time to really think about, what do I want out of this life and how do I want it to look? If we can get clear on that, then the self-care of saying no becomes a little bit easier, because we're not just, I guess we have a reason to say no. Mm-hmm. My reason is it's the second half of my life. I haven't got time. If I'm going to waste my time, I want to waste my time in a much more, because that feels like a waste to me. And I'm not saying that people who go to parties are wasting their time. What I'm saying is, for me, my early years, I did all of that. I checked it off the list. I enjoyed that season of my life. But in this season of your life, for those of you who are listening, do you want to continue that thing that you always say yes to? Maybe you don't. Well, Kim is talking about standing in your power. No is a complete sentence. Someone told me that once, and I love that. You don't have to have a reason. Again, you don't have to justify. You can just say, no, thank you.
Yeah. One of the tips I give people who have a hard time saying no is to not get, when somebody asks you if you can do something, is to not give your answer right away, ever. Even if you know it's a hard yes or a hard no. Instead of saying yes right away, because that's our tendency, right? Because they're standing right in front of us and we don't want to let them down. We don't want to seem like a bad guy, right? We don't want to seem like we're not helpful. So just say, let me think about it, or let me get back to you, or anything like that. Again, even if you know the answer already, I mean, eventually, hopefully we can get to the point where you can be on the spot and think about it and make the right decision for yourself. One of the things that I talk about with my clients a lot, because their parents are elderly and they need more care, is, sibling responsibilities. That's a whole other podcast.
That is a conversation.
Right.
There.
Yeah.
Yes. But please continue.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's it. Just, how do we delegate the responsibilities? And this person lives here. This person lives maybe in the same house as the parents live, right? Whereas their sibling lives 2,000 miles away. Who takes mom to her doctor's appointments? Who takes mom and dad grocery shopping? Who takes them? Who goes to the pharmacy to get their medication? These are things that come up. And if you don't practice small acts of self-care, then the larger decisions, like who's going to be responsible for taking mom to all her doctor's appointments, might fall on you. And then it's kind of like when you're cooking, where you can always add more salt, but you can't, it's hard to take the salt away. Yeah. So you want to add a little bit at a time. You don't want to add too much, because then it's really hard to now, take that back. So we need to be very careful about the way that we spend our time and the things that we say yes to, because there's only so much time in a day, and everything you say yes to for other people, you're essentially saying no to your own self, because you can't be in two places at once. And again, it goes back to not just being there physically. You are more than just your time. You are more than just, a helpful hand. So you have to make sure that you take care of yourself so that you can give quality time to the people that you love. That's what we ultimately want.
That is such a powerful, emotionally charged topic, is aging parents, and how we manage our energy and our emotions around that topic is also part of the self-care. I like to use the phrase, hold that space for yourself. If you're feeling a certain feeling, not being run by the emotion, but giving the emotion time, and, really give it some space. And what is it that's causing me to feel this way? Because I do believe we make a lot of those decisions emotionally. Mm-hmm. And it would be great if we could get a little bit more logical.
Yes. In fact, I don't think we should I'll have to, maybe later I'm going to regret saying this, but because I'll think of something, but I think we should.
How about the majority of the time?
The majority, yes. Most of the time, we should make our decisions logically, rationally. We do not want to make emotional decisions. Mm-hmm. But everything around us, all the advertising, just everything is based on us making an emotional decision. It's like Sarah McLachlan's, commercial on about, what is it, stray animals, or, they show all these poor animals. The next thing you know, you're at the pound adopting 3 dogs, and maybe that's not the best logical, rational decision.
You're not a 3-dog person.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the more we're able to take time for ourselves, and it's not just because we care about ourselves and, we want to be healthy and we want to be happy and all that kind of stuff. But again, one of the beautiful things about being in midlife is that you have 50, well, depending on how old you are, you have the first half of your life of all this wisdom and experience that you can tap into. You know so much more about yourself than you did when you were 20, making decisions. You can make much better decisions for yourself. You know who you are much better and deeper. So when you practice self-care, you're able to focus on you and discover who you are so you can make the best decisions for yourself going forward.
Yeah.
You won't keep marrying the same kind of person. You won't keep making the same kind of mistakes. But it takes self-reflection.
Yeah.
And introspection. And it's not easy. We have to let go of the decisions and the choices that we regret. We just have to learn from them and move on, and look forward and create that.
That's a great point of self-care that's kind of subtle, actually, Kim, is forgiving ourselves.
Yes. Right. I mean,
it's like a soft skill. It's not like I'm going to get a pedicure. I'm going to get a manicure, but you're actually doing inner work.
Yes. Yes. And, we women, we tend to punish ourselves over and over and over again. And it tends to take us a long time to forgive ourselves for something. But why? Imagine a friend coming to you and she continues to apologize over and over for something. Maybe she talked behind your back or who knows what, or maybe you lost your job because of her. I mean, whatever. At some point, if you want to, you say, okay, apology accepted. But for some reason, we just beat ourselves up and we will just punish ourselves over and over and over again. And this is one of the reasons too I became a coach, is because my clients, when they would eat more than they, my personal training clients, when they would, eat a whole tray of cookies as opposed to just having one or whatever, they'd feel really bad about themselves and they just punish themselves over and over and over again. And the last thing they needed from me, their trainer, was to punish them some more. Right? That's the last thing we need, is for someone else to punish us more. And so that's when I decided to, not train my clients physically on the outside, but help them discover what's going on, what caused them to go after the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and so on cookies. Yeah. That's more important than burning off those the actual eating the cookies and burning off those calories and all of that kind of stuff. So we have to learn how to forgive ourselves. It's hard. It's really hard.
But it shouldn't be. And we're shooting all over ourselves. But
yeah,
we are so quick to. Maybe we're not, but most of the time we will forgive those we love.
Exactly.
So maybe it's coming back to that place of learning to love yourself enough. To treat yourself as you would someone else.
Right.
Well, we have talked for almost a whole hour. This has been really a great conversation.
Deep stuff
And stuff I could literally talk about for hours. But I would love you, Kim, to share with the tribe, like if you had 3 kind of your favorite tips or strategies is more like it, to self-care or reminders to self-care, what would those 3 things be?
Okay. Well, the first one I think we talked about, which is remembering that self-care is cumulative. So don't make it a big production. Don't feel like in order to go for a walk after dinner, I got to buy some new tennis shoes. I got to get myself a nice water bottle. I have to, get a towel that I can take with me. That's making it a big production. Don't. Your shoes are fine. Your chanclas are fine, Do something small, because in order to do the larger things in the future, it's going to take the practice of doing the small things. It's kind of like if you're a public speaker, before you feel like you can talk in front of 1,000 people, you need to be able to talk in front of 10 people, right? And then 20, and then 50, and then 100. So the same is true. You don't get there overnight. That's something we have to remember. Yeah. let's see. I think another thing is just, if you're in midlife, or even if you're not yet in midlife, or you feel like you're past midlife, and people are probably wondering, what is midlife? And so let me just clear that up. I don't think it's an age, but rather a stage in a woman's life where she is starting to reflect on what's important to her. And, she's noticing she's in transition. It could be career, or it could be family, health, lots of different things. So midlife, this is a beautiful time of exploration. Take some time to learn about who you are now, what you want, what you like, what's important to you, what are your needs. And doesn't mean you have to fulfill all of these things right now. And I think that's what people would hesitate with is, well, if I feel like I have to do all these things now. No, just write them all down so you get to know yourself. And then the third thing is, that one question that a lot of people say it's good to ask, what would you tell your past self? What advice would you give your younger self? Well, I like this question better. What would your future self tell your present self? So what would the you at 70 or 80 or 90, that person that you are at that age, what wisdom, advice, tips would your 90-year-old self give yourself today? And I bet you it's going to be things having to do with saying no, taking care of yourself, loving more fully, having more fun, having more quality relationships and friendships, eating healthier, exercising more.
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Yes. There's no shame in having fun and feeling good, having joy. Off the top of my head, I think those are my 3 messages.
That is powerful. Self-care is cumulative. Midlife is not an age, but a stage. Investigate those transitions. And what would your future self advise you to do? That's a great way of looking at it. I've always looked at the whole, what would you want people to say at your funeral? Mm-hmm. That's another one that you can use. But I love the whole idea of advising yourself from an older age, like end of life to middle of life.
Yes.
You have
and we can do
years to live.
Right. You can do that at any age, right? Even if you're not in midlife yet,
Gaining that perspective. So good.
Yes.
So good. Well, Kim, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, for saying yes to me, for sharing your passion on Feminine Roadmap. I know that with the passion that you have is meant to be shared. And I trust that the person who hears this message is exactly the person that needed to hear your voice the way you said it, with the joy and the purpose that you have. So thank you for showing up for them today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a wonderful time, and thank you for the work that you're doing too, Gina.
Thank you. It is a joy, isn't it?
It sure is.
It really is. So today I've been talking with Kim Acedo. She's a midlife women's wellness coach. You can find her at transformationalwellnessforwomen.com. If you're driving or can't write that down, just head on over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 113. I will have hyperlinks to Kim there. That way you can find her quickly and easily. While you're there, please leave your name and email address. Join my tribe. I send out emails periodically, some just fun stuff, and there's a free gift if you do. You can also listen in on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. Please subscribe. Please share. And also, Kim has a podcast, and I will be putting that in the show note. The name of your podcast again, Kim?
Me Time Midlife Podcast.
Yes, I've been on that podcast. She's doing great work over there. So add that to your listen list. Share these resources with your women friends. And remember that self-care is generosity. It's not selfishness. Start today, start little, and begin to build the practice of taking good care of yourself so that you can take good care of those that you love. All right, my friends, thank you for giving us your time, your attention, and we will look forward to talking to you again next week. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.